Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto 2 Blue Vortex news update. And today we have the full spoilers for the upcoming manga chapter. And this one does not take its foot off the gas in terms of following last month's momentum, where we had a majority of the chapter be packed with action. This month, it is continuing that battle from the cliffhanger ending that we got last month. We got Sarada's broken Mangekyo Sharingan ability being shown, as well as Mitsuki versus Ryu and the fate of Konohamaru being revealed to us. As always, like we do with the spoilers every month, I'll go over the stuff that stands out the most to me personally from the chapter leaks, and then for the things I want more context on before formulating a concrete opinion, I'm going to save that for the review, which, depending on when we get the raw scans, hopefully within the next 24 hours, hopefully not Monday, but that remains to be seen. The review might drop on the 18th when the chapter drops officially. If not, then it'll be in the next couple days after, when the chapter review editor has time to cook. Finally, if you haven't already, don't forget to check out my Everything One Piece Explained channel, because we're finally almost caught up with the blind reviews, going through One Piece one chapter at a time from the start as a new reader. And starting soon, we'll be getting into lore videos, video essays with absolutely no theory videos. The link is on the Naruto Explained YouTube channel homepage, as well as in the end credits for the most recent podcast style blind review for chapter 1106. Let's start things off with the biggest thing here, the most controversial thing here on multiple levels, which is Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan reveal. For the first time in the 2 years since we saw her awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, Sarada has finally activated in battle, and it is something that I know a lot of people have been impatiently waiting on. We've been hit with so many people saying, where is her Mangekyo Sharingan? Why isn't she using it here? Or they're saying she doesn't know that she had the Mangekyo Sharingan, or my personal favorite, that Ikimoto totally forgot about her Mangekyo Sharingan. Well, lo and behold, we finally get the Mangekyo Sharingan shown in a battle, and it does not disappoint, because Ryu is the proper person for this power to be used on. Being blunt, it's because the situation calls for it. The context around why she uses it calls for it. This is what you hear me say repeatedly. This is a payoff. This is an earned payoff. So basically, Sarada's hand, it got forced here in this battle because of how strong Ryu was during the span of this fight, and her comrades, they are now in danger. And you got Yodo being poked up by Ryu worse than when Walter White from Breaking Bad had all those guys killed in prison via getting shanked. Very accurate comparison if you know Breaking Bad. So her Mangekyo Sharingan gets forced to be used here, because without the magnet release lodestone sealing blade, they have no way to counter Ryu's Iron Sand, and that's a problem. He can control their bodies using the Iron Sand and the Puppet Master combo. He can fight from a distance, and due to the hacks that comes from the Iron Sand, none of their attacks are able to do full damage on his body, because he's always breaking apart before the attacks hit deep, and Sarada is able to counter that now. So what exactly is her Mangekyo Sharingan power? Well, being blunt, based on what we have, it sounds like her ability is a cross between a black hole and using Kamui simultaneously, but it takes on the appearance that is different than Obito's Kamui. Instead, this one looks eerily similar to the portal that Kawaki and Jigen use when they use the Karma Seal to travel through dimensions or send people through those portals. However, what's interesting here is that Yodo, due to her sensory abilities, she was the one who knew all along that Sarada had a hidden power and that she wasn't using it at all in this fight. And she calls her out on it after Yodo got stabbed with what is being described as being a fatal wound, based on how Yodo herself as well as Ryu are talking. Again, we don't have the full raw scans yet, so I can't ascertain the full extent of the damage, but based on the dialogue and Ryu openly stating that he's going to kill everyone, and he is savagely counting down from 4 to 3 after the attack, it does look as if she does not get medical attention, Yodo is in danger of dying, because she flat out says she is done for after getting hit. Now, it gets even more interesting and more controversial, because we get told why behind Sarada choosing to use Mangekyo Sharingan now opposed to any other time in the story. So seemingly Yodo is getting attacked, she's getting stabbed up, and after trying to bargain with Ryu by offering to help him find Boruto, Sarada begins to think back to her conversation with Sumire, which is still very heavy on her mind. And as she focuses on that part about their differing philosophies when it comes to helping Boruto, and she thinks about the burden that Boruto is carrying in order to protect the village from afar, that's where the change starts. So as a bleeding Yodo is telling Sarada that she knows that there are feelings inside of Sarada's heart that Sarada is scared to accept, feelings that she doesn't understand, she reminds Sarada to think of the person who Sarada wants to be strong for, saying that there is someone in Boruto who Sarada wants to support even when the entire world is his enemy, and that she says specifically Sarada wants to be the only person standing in his corner, and that by not accepting those feelings in her heart, by not giving into her confusion and her fear, by not facing it, she's subconsciously trying to tell herself that it's something other than what it really is, which is why Yodo makes a final push. She tells her, stop wasting the power you're hiding. She tells her she doesn't know why Sarada is choosing to hold back on that power, and that it's okay if Sarada doesn't want to use her power for everyone, because Sarada only wants to use it for the special person who Sarada wants to protect. I gotta stress this because people are already taking this as like shipping stuff. There's a really big fat word that is used here, which is called unconsciously. Sarada is unconsciously putting this restraint on herself, meaning she doesn't realize that she's doing it. It's very similar to what you have with Nin and Hunter x Hunter, where when you give yourself like the self-imposed restrictions, only in this case, this wasn't her consciously doing it. This was her subconsciously doing it. Want to throw that out there now because I can already see the shipping wars getting more toxic than they've already been in the hours since this has come out. But Yodo keeps pushing, and Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan cuts on, and we see her Mangekyo Sharingan ability activate, and it's basically removing Ryu's Iron Sand from the battlefield via a self-contained black hole that she makes in a matter of moments. And she's left everyone shot using the power that she's using. And what I like about this is that whole situation with Yodo, as you've heard me say numerous times, Ikimoto is heavily inspired by Dragon Ball. That mirrors what we got in, I want to say around volume 30 of Dragon Ball, where Gohan transforms into a Super Saiyan 2, and he got that speech from number 16. It very much feels like this. And what's also interesting is that Mitsuki is confused by what he's seeing with Sarada, which that's our confirmation. Sarada kept the Mangekyo Sharingan a secret from everyone, including her teammate, which that should be how it is. You guys have heard me say repeatedly, you do not waste the Mangekyo Sharingan, and you do not telegraph you have it either, unless you're getting ready to use it in a decisive way that ends the battle. You don't do what Sasuke did, where he was a dummy wasting it on a low-level Cloud Ninja for Genjutsu, where he was looking for Killer Bee. Sasuke could have used a basic Sharingan Genjutsu, and the guard would have told him everything, but he used the Mangekyo because he was flashing it. I'll go into this more in terms of why, because I've already got a lot of DMs and emails and people saying, oh my God, this is a plot hole. This is not a plot hole. Do not throw that word around loosely. However, what is big here is that this is indeed an overpowered ability based on how this has been described. Again, it's a mix between a black hole and Kamui. With it sucking up chakra-based stuff, it reminds me of what we said in the video titled, What Will Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan Power Be? That we did 2 years ago on the channel after she awakened it, where one power, I said I strongly believe one's going to be Amaterasu by default, but I said the second power, we need to look at Shinto deities associated with Amaterasu, Susanoo's wife named Kushina Hime, and the goddess that got Amaterasu outside the cave, which is Ameno Uzume, and in particular, look at the gods associated with them and not so much those gods themselves. And one of the things we discussed is that one of these deities had an ability, when you translate it into the Naruto world, it will be akin to being able to drain away or transport chakra or life force in a forcible way. Similar to how Kamui can teleport people or objects, This is more about draining chakra or life force or moving chakra-based stuff away from an area, which this seems like this is what Ikimoto went with. It also is something that fits the pattern of Boruto's trend to use science. So Naruto's Baryon mode was pretty much a mix between a red supergiant and a supernova. The only thing that comes after that is a black hole, which I'm 90% certain we discussed that in one of the 2 video essays we did going over the beauty of Naruto losing Kurama. So the black hole comparison fits as well, and it continues the trend of science being used in Boruto, like each of the car enters having tech puns for their name, which also ties into the powers and personalities. The reason why Sarada's ability being akin to a black hole fits is because Naruto is the 7th Hokage, Shikamaru has never formally become 8th Hokage, Sarada wants to be Naruto's successor, black hole comes after supernova, supernova comes after red supergiant. Now for the Konohamaru fans, I probably left you with massive blue balls. You're like, man, what happened to Konohamaru, man? So does he live? Does he die? Well, Ikimoto made a very bold choice here. Konohamaru somehow managed to survive Matsuri, and he came up clutch in the 4th quarter with a comeback that is so epic that it might be the comeback of the manga so far. This is the equivalent of being down 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl and throwing for 200 yards in the 4th quarter. That's what Konohamaru basically did here. He was able to riz her up, get her to hesitate, and in the moment where she hesitated and was thinking and focusing super hard on the beating of her heart and the words that Konohamaru was saying, the way that he was making her fall in love with him basically, Konohamaru takes this time to bust out a Rasengan attack that would make Naruto proud. So he didn't just use a giant Rasengan. This is Konohamaru, right? This man used a double giant Rasengan to blast up Matsuri's body, and it goes without saying, we have to address some of the agendas that are being pushed right now by disingenuous actors, dragging Matsuri's strength level. I want to get ahead of this before it goes too far. And the problem with this is that people are making these arguments and they're purposely ignoring context. So based on what we have right here, Matsuri appears to be fully off guard. That does not mean that Konohamaru does not have a high AP capacity. I don't think anyone will argue he does not have high AP capacity. A double giant Rasengan, it is nothing to play with, especially when someone is off guard here. And that's the important thing people keep leaving out. The entire logic is disingenuous and it is faulty at best. So by that logic, Zetsu is 3-eyed Madara level, since he was able to stab Madara from behind in a way where his whole hand went through the front of Madara's chest. By that same logic, Momoshiki's kunai is now base adult Sasuke level, even though Sasuke was off guard to the point where his Sharingan was cut off and he had zero reason to think there was another threat on the battlefield after Ishiki died. By that same logic, Kaguya is as strong as Ishiki. She might even be stronger by that logic, even though we're literally told she waited until Ishiki was off guard and she hit him with an attack. Konohamaru's situation, it isn't too much different than the Kaguya one. Kaguya has several instant kill jutsu, several hard-hitting jutsu. The regular Rasengan on its own is a jutsu that is considered to be one of the highest levels of changing chakra form. Hell, depending on the translation you use, because again, Japanese is very context heavy, it is flat out called the highest level of changing chakra form. Off guard attacks by a jutsu of that nature, they will mess anyone up if their guard is completely lowered. So let's go back to Naruto's manga to make this example. Kabuto was an easy 7 or 8 tiers above the Search for Tsunade arc base Naruto. Even Kabuto conceded that had he not reacted to the jutsu at the last minute, it would have killed him. That was a basic Rasengan, a double giant Rasengan at point blank range with a higher massive volume than a regular Rasengan, let alone 2 of them. When someone's guard is completely lowered, it's the equivalent of me going up to Roman Reigns and hitting him with a sucker punch in the back of his head when he's about to kiss his wife. I'm no small guy. I am a very solid 220 pounds, but that's a man who's 294 pounds. And that's a man who has almost a 6-inch difference in height between us. Dude, 6'3", I'm 5'9 3/4. Average height for a US male, like it's 3/4 over, but still average. Whereas a guy that height at 6'3" is only 3.9% of US males. So I say that to say this right here. There's a reason nobody respects a sucker punch. It does more damage and it does greater damage than what you could do on your own. Like, I have a personal story to tell you. One of the ladies at my gym, her husband is in jail for hitting a guy with a sucker punch during an argument, and he put the guy into a coma for 4 years. The guy is significantly bigger than him, but it is a sucker punch. I do, however, think it is bold to not have Konohamaru eaten, and I do stand on my belief that at least one Shinju needs to consume one of their targets, because that is akin to the Akatsuki never extracting a Biju from a Jinchuriki. At some point, we need to see it happen so that we know clearly what the stakes are. There's more that happens in this chapter, like Mitsuki versus Ryu and Ryu's conversation to try and get Sarada and Yodo to sell at Boruto's location, and apparently Jura is able to sense what is happening on the battlefield. But I want to reserve my takes on this and for some of the text heavy sections until I can see all the raw scans myself, and I can have one of the translators who helps me out take a look at them. And I also want to compare it with the other translations that people like Salad Boats on Twitter post, because I know for whatever reason some of you guys only keep up with the spoilers. You don't actually read the chapters, which I do not advise against, since every month the text spoilers leave out information that address the very things that people end up bitching about when you read it. As always, the chapter review will be up between the 18th and the 20th, depending on when I get the raw scans, and the chapter editor has a couple of days to work on it. While you wait for the review, click here on the left for this Naruto Explain video, or click here above for my latest blind review of One Piece chapter 1106, or click here on the right for this video for my Anime Explain channel where I talk about non-Naruto content.